Um, I don't think I've really done this before. So there's a first time for everything. Yeah, I just wanted to start with a little bit of appreciation for the conditions that have allowed you to so yeah, if you start sort of peeling back what the conditions are for this retreat to be offered, and for you to be able to be here at 7:30 on the 8th of May 2020, you probably find quite a few different things to be grateful for. So there's the condition of, you could say, the Buddha, who 2,500 years ago had an experience that felt like it met the question that humanity, or that human beings kind of inherit by dint of being human. What's going on here? And all the different teachers and students that taught and passed on and listened and practiced, and our particular lineage, this particular Buddhist lineage, it's been around for about 60 years. And then within this particular lineage, there is Buddha field, which is an expression, a particular expression of that lineage. And all the people over the last 25 years of that expression who've been finding land and making it a place of sanctuary, a place where people can come and practice in the great beauty of the earth and the sky. And everything that all those people and all the people that have responded to that call of wanting to practice in nature, wanting to sit around a fire, wanting to listen to the birds, wanting to feel the cool grass beneath your bare feet, and wander around woodlands and have a shower with looking up and seeing the clouds, all these things that we can experience on a Buddha field retreat. And then all the different things that have come together, including however this virus started and how it progressed across so many different countries and people, and shutting things down, bang, 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 bang. There's been a number of wonderful little memes, like, I think we've been told to go to our room and think about what we've been doing. It's kind of, someone else talked about it being a sense of a time out. Time out now. We get to do time out. And and connecting with our, particularly I think in the West, we're really protected from the fragility of life. In the Buddha's day, sickness, death, and old age were probably just a lot more real. The the death of children, the death, all these deaths were more real, and as it is still in, vast majority of the world, where people are really in touch with the fragility of life and how easy it is not to have life at all, and the thousands of people all over the world that have died of the virus, and all the people who've risen to the challenge of being kind and caring and looking after vulnerable people with less abilities. So here we are, having chosen in the lockdown, in the pause. It made me think a little bit of those of you who've seen Inception, where they're going into somebody's dream, but then they have to go into the next person's dream in the dream, and then they have to go into the next person's dream and have to go like 3 layers down to get to kind of the deepest part, to try to change something at a really, really fundamental and deep level. And in a sense, I kind of can see this, sort of that the grossest movement of, that energy that exists in the world. When you look out, you see people striding to the train station and being on the train and going somewhere and getting something done, and all that sense of all that kind of pomp and circumstance, really, about life and what I'm going to do with my life today. And at its grossest level, that's now been it's no longer apparent. It's just like I was walking down from a walk, and I just was like, wow, this just feels like the Caribbean, because people are walking, but they're not walking somewhere, they're just walking. It's very rare in England that you just see people walking. They're always walking somewhere. And as I was kind of walking down the hill on my walk, I was like looking around me, I was like, oh, people are just walking. So then there's kind of that level, and then there's another level where we've decided to kind of carve out some space for these 3 days. And every time we choose to sort of meditate, we choose to see what else is there other than all the sound and fury of this machine-like energy of ours that's conditioned to believe that it needs to fight for its survival adaptation. If we get enough trains to go to enough places, we have enough things to do, then somehow life will have been lived. And I think most of us probably who've come here have this sense that that actually just creates a lot of tension and a lot of thirsting after the next thing and the next thing. And those moments where it's felt a pleasure and a treasure to be alive are moments where, in a sense, usually moments when we've managed to disengage from all that machinery and all that compulsion. So we can just be grateful just for having given ourselves this pause within a pause within a pause, and to all the conditions and all the people that are wanting more and more of ourselves and more of the people around us, more and more of humanity to wake up to the fact that more, better, different doesn't give us the satisfaction and the connection and the peace that we're all really yearning for. So I'm happy to be with all of you. We've had a glimpse of that. It feels like good company to be in. Yeah. So this morning in the meditation that I led, I read this little thing that I wrote a while ago. And I wrote it as something that was basically about trying to remember. So much of the spiritual life is actually just remembering to remember to remember. You know, am I caught in the machinery of survival, or am I present to being caught in the machinery of survival? And am I able to release myself and let go and rest in something other than all of that is? So I can't remember who this quote said, but someone said, I am of the belief that it is important to have what we stand for in writing somewhere. And so I wrote this little thing, which I say to myself most mornings when I wake up, as a way of, because it's like we wake up often just into the default habitual mind stream, you know, and can be a bit hit and miss, I think you'll find. So sometimes when you can catch yourself in the morning, it's quite helpful. I find it helpful to just say this to myself as a way of orientating myself towards the day. So just read it again, because kind of has a relevance for the theme of this talk. So every day, every moment is a unique invitation. So right now, this very moment is a unique invitation. An invitation to rest in awareness. An invitation to wake up from the survival adaptation. Waking up to a being of peace. So there's all that machinery that exists, that's going on in our minds, in our bodies, in our environment, all of that compulsion. But in every moment, there's also pieces also in every moment available. A being of peace, a being in love, a seeing of beauty. All need for security, control, acceptance. All needs of security, control, acceptance dissolve. And what's left? A strong and relaxed body, a warm and knowing heart, a clear and quiet mind, and relishing and savouring every moment of this brief life. So I think what I'm trying to do in with those words is to try to kind of find a particular relationship to life. And it's interesting, we're always we've always got a particular relationship to something. So if we were gonna at 7:30 do a meditation, you know, there's a particular relationship that you have to meditation that would have kind of put you maybe in a particular posture or a particular, you know, there's a kind of already existing, already conditioned sort of approach to, oh, now we're going to do meditation. And that puts us in a certain way of being. Or now we're going to listen to a talk. Sometimes so we think, okay, I'm going to do meditation. So it's a bit like, right, better get ready for my meditation. And it's almost like tension can come in the end. So this is just me. I don't know about you guys. And then when I'm listening to a talk, sometimes I think, right, get the blanket out, take it out, snuggle up, get my cup of tea, you know. And there's a kind of different relationship to, like, oh, I'm now listening to a talk, you know. And it's just really interesting if we can get present to it, like, what's that about, you know? And can we begin to, because I have the same thing about giving a talk. It's like I much prefer leading a meditation to giving a talk, because there's something that I kind of feel a bit like, whatever that thing is that sometimes we think, oh, I'm now going to meditate, you know, now I'm going to give a talk, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, whatever. But then if we can kind of we can become aware of the conditioning that's affecting our body and our heart and our mind in any situation, then we've got a bit of a choice. And you know, a choice not to have to be dictated to by that. So I'm trying to do this talk slightly different to how I often do talks, because I've noticed that particular tension creeping up on me. But it's sort of, I mean, a retreat is like this invitation to practice more deeply, but to practice in such a way that we can keep that flavor of what we've experienced and that flavor of our beingness. It can be really enjoyable when we, you know, have less input and less stimulation and all of that. How can we have that become a kind of be blended in with life, rather than now I'm meditating, now I'm not meditating, now I'm giving a talk, now I'm not giving a talk, now I'm leading a meditation, now I'm not leading it. How can we begin to have a relationship to all of that, which feels more of a piece, you know, more of one piece. So I was thinking about, well, the title of the talk is The Bluebell Woods Within. And I was thinking that there's this kind of metaphorical bluebell woods. They're a kind of image for a particular quality that we can experience, particularly when we're on retreat in the land, on the land, in the woodland. So I'd just like to kind of put you in touch with that. So we're not going to meditate now, but I'm going to just going to kind of like tell you a story about a bluebell wood. The bluebell wood. And I'd just like you to just imagine that it's towards the end of the day. It's about 10 to 8. And the sun's almost down. There's a lovely warm feeling, a balmy feeling in the air. And we've decided we've chosen that we're going to walk to the Bluebell wood that we know and love. And this is a time of year in May where you can find carpets of bluebells. So we walk, we find our way to the edge of the Bluebell wood. And as we get closer, the ground begins to get softer and softer beneath the soles of our feet. And the first thing as we enter the woods, we can hear the birds singing. They seem to have a kind of brightness and energy that's quite surprising. And maybe you can tell some of the different birds that are singing, some of the different noises, and as you walk, you can also see the brightness in the green at this time of year. Brightness in the green, especially in the beech trees. They seem to be really excited to be getting out their new clothes, their new skirts, their new things to wear, new things to show. And you're also seeing little gnats in the air, buzzing around, catching the light, last of the light. And you're also seeing, just allowing that amazing colour of the bluebells to just soak in. Reminds you of something, this blue of the bluebells. You're not quite sure what it reminds you of, it just reminds you of just something between worlds. You might notice other plants around you. You can feel the rhythm of this, of you walking, stopping to look at something and walking. And you can particularly enjoy the smell, particular smells in the woodland. And the moisture in the air you can feel on your skin. You can also feel little bits of breeze, wind ruffling your hair, blowing on your cheeks. And you find somewhere to sit comfortably in this bluebell wood. Maybe you have your back against the trunk of a really loving and comforting tree. And your body just knows that it can rest deeply. And as you breathe in, it feels like you can just really breathe in the silence and the stillness and all the activity in the woodland. The bluebells just being bluebells. You have nowhere to go, nothing to do. Now you can just sort of notice how your body feels in relationship to the sights and sounds of this woodland. What's present in your body? What's present in your heart? What is your heart feeling, resonating with? What's happening in your mind? These three centers of experience: the mental world. What's happened in the mental world? What would it be like if you could experience your body as the woodland? What would it be like if you could experience your heart as the bluebells? What would it be like if you could experience your mind as the sky? Being gently tickled by the tall branches of the beech trees or the other trees. The body, hundreds of plants have already become the soil, this earth and this woodland. Everything that's growing here, being shaded, nourished. The heart, the beauty, particular color that can't quite be pinned down. The space, vastness above. the mind. And as your awareness moves around this environment, you see where the mind rests. Some aspect of the natural environment you can find where you are drawn to just one thing. It could be an insect, a leaf, a stone. Just see if something in this environment, just one thing you can kind of bring into the central focus. You find something. So you're going to do just a little reflection. Maybe it's a twig, maybe it's a feather, maybe it's some berries, maybe it's a little vole. I just want you to rest your attention on that single item of the natural world. I'm just going to see if you can hold your attention, staying with that thing. Just sitting beside it. Giving it your attention. And then I want you to just turn over a question in your mind. When did this particular aspect of reality, when did it begin? When did this leaf or this plant or this, when did it begin? Can you find a place where it began? Maybe you can also reflect on when did it when did it end? When will it end? How will it end? You'll find your mind may want to turn away from this reflection, not to stay with it too long, or it starts on other things, but just keep bringing it back. You're able to hold that reflection for a little while. What do you find if you ask yourself, where did this begin? And where does it end? What happens to the body as you reflect? What happens to the heart? What happens to the mind? What can you taste in this reflection? What can you taste in this place of the bluebell wood? It may only be a tiny glimpse, or it may feel like a full body, an even bigger than body. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this reflection to a close. I'm just going to give you about 5 or just over 5 minutes. If you'd like to write anything down in your notebook, or if there's any particular words, not a lot of words, but the few essence words that feel like they're part of this experience. I invite you to either write them down for yourself, or you can write them in the chat. You can get a little collective sense of the experience of a bluebell wood. So we're going to do this in silence, and I'll bring you back with the sound of a bell. It's interesting, ringing the bell. Can we stay with whatever it is that we're with and not go, oh, now I'm going to do this. This is now different from that. Can that be seamless? Because can we stay with whatever it is that we're imbibing, or we're experiencing, and can we bring that into what's next, and not sort of dividing things up. Interesting. And I just wonder, would somebody be willing to read these words that have been written? Would someone be up for just reading them out to us? Thank you, Joanna.
Breath and space, decaying and giving life, unfolding, unnoticeable, integration, vitality, nourishment, softness with no trace, flow, oneness, connection, eternal, reciprocity, abundance, giving and receiving, spacious, calm and connection, rest and seeds, beautiful sadness, continuous regeneration, dissolving, merging, continuing, peacefulness, no ending or beginning, embraced, peaceful, sameness and uniqueness, wordless, surrender, expansion, vibrant senses, beauty, simplicity, divine design.
Thank you. I just wonder, Lotus, would you be able to maybe could you copy these onto another document so we could have them for tomorrow? Because I think when we close this room, that will go.
No, the chat will. I could save the chat.
Okay. So thank you for that. That was really beautiful. That was really lovely. So there's something that's possible, that we get these glimpses of in our bodies, in our hearts, in our mind, something that feels very different to the caught up, tight, sort of desire for something to hold on to, something that will solve something, or be an end to something, or somehow put everything right, and yet we can get this sense that we've kind of evoked with these words of something other, and yet what seems to happen is that it's very hard to really stay in touch, or to really mature and feel like we can live life more from this place, than the place that is very driven and fearful and afraid. And I suppose that's at the heart of Buddhist practice, or of spiritual practice, is how do you grow? There's different images, whether it's, do you grow this ability, or do you release everything that separates you from this kind of connection? Or do you surrender to, there's these different images in the spiritual life about how do you find this mysterious space, finding the deeper and deeper resonance in our bodies, and in our hearts and in our minds, that we can experience this and we can gift the experience as well. And so I was going to just talk a little bit about what I have found to be kind of sort of 3 key skills, maybe, that can be part of the process. So you can never pin it down completely. You can never know it with your conceptual mind, and so any time we talk about it, we're just pointing to something. It's not the thing itself. But I think it's interesting to sort of think in terms of, for some reason, everyone kind of, after a while, after practicing for 30 or 40 years, I seem to see other people around me, you kind of get on a particular little bandwagon. That's your little bandwagon. And my little bandwagon is this thing of keeping coming back to the body, the heart, and the mind. And thinking about how can we practice with the body, the heart, and the mind in such a way that we're stacking the odds for and developing the capacity to be open to this different order of experience that is possible for human beings. Even though, if we look around, we see how deeply entrenched, the wheel of life has at its center the greed, the hatred, and the ignorance. At the center of life, that is trying to maintain security, maintain that sense of having to survive and hold on. That's an inherited order of life that we all default to a lot of the time. And how do we train ourselves? In a way, the whole of the Buddha's path is training ourselves to be able to rest more and more deeply in this other order. And so one of the things so if you think about the body, it's made up of lots of cells. And I remember when I did biology, it's been O-level, looking through a microscope and seeing a little amoeba, little single-celled, whatever it is. And we poked it with something, a little shard of glass or something. You kind of poked it. And it was just really, I just remember it very much, that as soon as we did that, it immediately sort of tightened up and moved away, and I just thought, yeah, that's kind of baseline instinctive way of dealing with threat. Tighten up and move away. So when we're working with the body, when we try to, rather than tighten up and turn away, we relax and open and turn towards, then that is immediately training ourselves in a different modality of being. So there's a kind of training that is involved in concentration, something that we keep repeating. But like, you know, when you go to the gym or something, you keep repeating something in order to build up a skill so that you become skilled in that thing. So there's a kind of returning to, you could call it maybe concentration, but concentration sometimes has some slightly other weird connotations, but it's a way, it's some way you can practice of you keep doing this thing that you will eventually get better. So there's training with concentration, the body. And then with the mind, we can, through the practices of like the metta bhavana, which is the loving kindness meditation, we're trying to habituate the body to have a loving response and a connecting response to whatever arises. And with the mind, we're trying to teach the mind to be able to stay with something. And when the mind stays with something, it's not in its habitual modality of telling stories, creating dramas, doing all the stuff that the mind likes to do to keep us busy and to keep feeling safe. So there's kind of trainings that we can do for the body, the heart, and the mind that help us. And part of, another aspect of that training is creating clarity. And another way of speaking about that is, I like to think about it as untangling. Because the more tangled things are, the more difficult it is to really see them clearly. And when we stop and look at things and they're not jumping around all over the place and we know what they are, then often we can see that we don't have to be responding to something in that habitual way. So with the body, all of these things are things that we can apply in meditation. We can become really clear about what we're experiencing where in our bodies. What are we experiencing where? And with our heart, we can become really familiar with the different flavors and tones and feelings and where they live and how they affect us and what they do in our bodies. We can become really good at knowing our heart. And with our mind, when we're untangling, we're really trying to look underneath all the concepts that aren't what's real and just try to sit with what's really there underneath all the concepts, underneath all the words, underneath all the stories. And we can, ask ourselves of our thoughts, is it really true? Is it really real? What are the nature of these thoughts? And whenever we untangle something, there's often this little sense of energy release. Something's like, oh yes, it's not what I thought it was, So if anyone had told me that I'd spend, that I wouldn't really probably have any paid work in 2020, and that could be absolutely fine, I just wouldn't have been able to entertain it. Just wouldn't have been a thought that would be, of course not, I've got to go out there and I've got to earn a living. That's just what I've got to do. Every so often I've had a thought, or maybe I should have a sabbatical, and it's like never stayed for very long. It's like, no way, I just couldn't do that. You know. Shall I turn the light on? A bit better. So the third pathway that I found really helpful is an interesting word. It's called equanimizing. Equanimizing. And it's a word that I don't know how to describe it. Like when something is at the cusp of shifting from one thing to another. So when you don't resist an experience and you let go of tension around it and you let go of not wanting it to be the way that it is, there's a particular moment where it moves from being suffering to just being sensation. And then if you can stay with it, if you're a real adept yogi, you can move it from sensation to bliss. That any sort of suffering can move along that spectrum. So with our bodies, we can learn not to turn away from sensations. And this, a particularly good way of practicing is like things around like heat and cold. Often like when we're cold or when we're hot, we're like, it's too hot, or it's too cold, I'm too cold. And if we can just not resist the sensation and we can just stay with it, it's really cool to find the moment where it stops being a problem. And that's like when it's kind of been equanimized. It's no longer, the resistance is no longer there. So the agitation is no longer there. And when the agitation is no longer there, then something falls away and it's not what we thought it was. So when it comes to feelings in the heart, we can, again, it's very much, and a lot of people have got this sort of idea now of welcoming the different aspects, different bits of our emotional life, welcoming them, thanking them, accepting them. And again, sometimes that can be an issue because we're actually doing that in order to get them to go away. If I accept this really, really well, then maybe it will go away. And so that's a real little near enemy that we've got to watch out for, as opposed to like, yeah, and you can stay, I've got spare room, there's dinner in the oven, stay for a while, And there's something that happens when there truly is an opening to and a willingness to experience, that we can, in our feeling world, something can shift and then something's released. And then with our mind, when we have equanimized something, is when that particular story or image no longer holds us in its grip. It's released. It may still be running there, running around, but it's no longer got the upper hand. It's no longer causing suffering. It may still be uncomfortable, but it no longer sparks more agitation in the body, which creates, it sort of becomes a little pinball, bing bong bing, things kind of bouncing off in each other. It stops, one way of saying it stops creating more karma, and something is released, and sometimes it's called a taste of purification. Something feels purified. So those are the 3 skills. Learning to be able to, training in concentration, in clarity, in equanimity. And if we apply those to the body, the heart, and the mind, it's something that can clarify what it is we're trying to do, but without trying to pin it down so hard that it loses the magic or it loses the mystery. So I suppose what we can do is to help each other to know that there is something other available for human beings other than being driven to consume, to push away, to ignore reality. Only to find that reality, the thing we're trying to avoid, is actually extremely beautiful. And we can help each other to stack the odds in this lifetime of spending more and more time, more and more of our experience connecting with what is our birthright, what is possible for us, rather than being stuck in the inherited human condition. So we'll just sit for a little bit, just sit for 5 minutes or so, just absorbing anything that you'd like to absorb from that. And then we'll have about 15 minutes. Maybe we'll just want silence, or I'm open to answering questions if there are any questions. So if there's anybody, I can't see everybody, but if there's anybody that has a question, anything they'd like to say. Zoe?
Yes, when I'm contemplating what you said, thank you. Staying with feelings, staying with sensations that I'd want to push away. What comes really clear to me is a lot of the pushing away is fear of death. So when I was thinking about the woods, it's interesting, I was thinking about decay, I was thinking about branches of trees decaying and it being okay and wonderful and marvelous, because that's happening to something else. But when I start contemplating it's happening to me, there's a really strong, no, I don't want to die, I don't, that fear. And that's kind of what fuels my pushing away. Can you suggest any way to respond to that?
Well, there's two lines of attack, lines of inquiry. One, the most traditional practice for fear of death is the metabhavana. The more the body knows and can really soak, and as something that's not just a mental thing, but an experience, can really, when you feel that sense of connection, the warmth and the love in your body, and you can allow that and stay with that. That's kind of reconditioning towards love and away from fear. So that's one way of just upping the ante. I don't know what your metabhavana practice. Sometimes people kind of shy away from the metabhavana. So that would be something to do. Loving kindness meditation. And the other is to really kind of the inquiry that we did about the object in the woodland, which is, when did it begin and when will it end, would be quite an interesting reflection to do on yourself. When did I begin and when will I end? And that's quite, it's quite in small doses, but that's quite it's quite a good thing to sort of do periodically, to kind of like see through this thing we call death. What is it really? It's not what we think it is. Really.
Thank you.
Also, I was just thinking a little bit about, yeah, I don't know, bringing meditation off the cushion really, and finding ways, say with the Metabhavna, just bringing it into more everyday life, you know. So like right now we can just be aware of whatever feelings of solidarity and connection we have with the people sitting here. And then, you know, where is that in our bodies? Where can we feel that? You know, where in our body is this feeling of connection? I can feel it sort of in my back, slightly around my chest, slightly in my throat, slightly in my eyes. And can I really savor it? Can I really revel in it? Can I really allow it to be there? Because it's interesting that, you know, left to our own devices, we tend to move towards painful experience, you know. It's like when we've got a little ulcer in our mouth, we've got a whole mouth without an ulcer, but where does our tongue want to go? Always to the little bit that's got the ulcer on it. And we just make it kind of like we work it. And that's a bit like, you know, of all the potential thousands of thoughts we could go to, where do we go? So yes, just like learning to really kind of savor and allow and mature or deepen those experiences of connection and love.
I do have another question. You often talk about heart connection, and you have in this evening, and I know in the meditation this morning as well. When I think of my heart, as in where my heart is, it doesn't evoke anything for me. I don't feel emotion in my heart. I feel it somewhere else in my body. I certainly don't feel it up here. Is that normal? Am I normal? And you know, is heart not where your heart is? Is it where you feel emotion?
Can you give me an example of an emotion and where you feel it?
So love, I tend to feel it kind of around my solar plexus area. A lot of my emotions are based around my stomach area, my lower body. Yeah.
I guess heart is in a way is quite a sort of metaphorical, and it's quite energetic as well, isn't it? So I think wherever you feel it is fine. You know, it's just you know, it's a sort of a field where you know, sort of emotions are getting are finding an expression. Sometimes we can be a bit numb in our hearts somehow. Sometimes we can think that we're not feeling anything there. But if we're feeling, if we kind of get very relaxed and very safe, you might start noticing that there's actually more going on there than you think. Maybe, I don't know. But I think the main thing is that you know where emotions are kind of twanging around in the body, and just give them the same kind of tenderness and attention wherever they are, wherever they show up.
Thank you.
So shall we bring this session to a close. And I'm just wondering if you just sort of the question is, you know, I mean, I just know this for myself. It's like I'm feeling in a really lovely connected space with you guys right now. I know there's kind of washing up to be done in the kitchen, and then, you know, there's like, what will I do before I go to bed? And, you know, it's like, and, you know, I'm sort of just giving myself the invitation to how would it be like to kind of interact with the physical and non sort of the being elements and the non and the material things with this sort of tenderness that I'm feeling right now, and see if we can tuck ourselves to bed with any of the you know, sweetness or connection that we've felt this evening to each other or to ourselves or to the Bluebell Woods. See if we can just gently, you know, like it's a little bird, you know, we just gently taking it into our dreams and into our sleep. See if we can maintain this quality. And if we don't, that's fine. If you go for the beer, don't worry. Whatever's there has to be there. Just an invitation to hold, so sort of to keep the thread. So, yep.
Thank you very much.